Now, it's no secret that I'm absolutely excited for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and we're probably just weeks away from getting more news. So that's got the cogs turning in my head on making this video on what to expect from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, I'm not going to be going into kind of story beats or talking about predictions on a timeline or timelines or what stamp we're going to see and what's going to be happening with Zack, though I'm going to touch on certain story points to kind of support what I'm talking about when it comes to locations, characters, and the kind of core gameplay from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So I'm hoping you can join me in maybe agreeing what I have to say or just disagreeing. I'm hoping we can have a healthy discussion and maybe we can just all travel on this copium together, and I can come back to this video once Rebirth is out and we've all completed it and say, yeah, Jen, you were right. Or be like, Jen, what were you on that night when you made that video? So that is just the kind of the fun aspect of this video going forward. So with that all being said, what is up guys, Jen here, hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel. I've got you covered with timestamps, so if you want to go to a certain thing that I'm going to talk about, then skip ahead, watch this video however you want, whatever floats your boat. All I ask is for you to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you like the content, hit the notification bell so you're notified of that content, and of course get involved in the comment section below. And a little plug for myself, follow me on all my social medias if you want to know all things Final Fantasy. So let's just dive straight into it, and let's kind of get the main point out of the way, where I think a lot of people will be asking, where does Final Fantasy VII Rebirth end? I am taking the safe bet and saying that it's going to end at the Northern Crater. That's where the Materia has been summoned, and it makes sense because the logo of Final Fantasy VII is Materia, and we've only seen it in like the little flash in Remake, and we're probably going to see the end of Rebirth of it actually being a presence on Gaia. So I'm going to completely flip what we can expect from Final Fantasy VII and talk about mini games. In particular, I want to talk about the Chocobos and how I think they will work in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, a safe bet would be going off the trailer that we're going to get some kind of treasure hunting, because we had the Scent and Scour kind of commands while they were riding the Chocobos in the trailer. So I'm expecting to have treasure hunting and places to go with your Chocobo to find maybe hidden materia, hidden weapons, accessories, or anything that might help throughout the story or side quests. I'm also fully expecting Chocobo racing to be a presence because we've got these big open spaces, and of course we are going to be visiting the Gold Saucer, and I do think that we'll be getting Chocobo breeding, but just a little bit different this time. I don't think we'll be breeding for colors of Chocobos. I think it will be more akin to kind of training your Chocobo to maybe enhance its scenting and its scouring, much like you kind of do in Final Fantasy IX when it comes to Chocobo Hot and Cold, but I fully expect there to be some kind of system in there to make your Chocobo stronger, whether it's in racing or scouring. I don't think we're going to get Chocobos that can go over mountains. I don't think we're going to get Chocobos that go over water, maybe rivers here and there. But I think it's going to be very contained, and it's going to be more statistic based when it comes to racing and kind of treasure hunting. Staying on the subject of mini games and side content, I want to talk about the Gold Saucer. I mentioned it. I think it's definitely going to have some kind of Chocobo racing implemented in there, but I think the Gold Saucer is going to be very akin what you get from a Yakuza game. When you go in the Sega arcade, you kind of have all these mini games. I think we're going to get a crane claw machine in there where we can maybe get some items to kind of, I don't know, display somewhere, or just really cool key items to have in the inventory. But I'm fully expecting to kind of get that Yakuza feel, much like I did from Wall Market in Remake. I do expect other mini games to return, maybe basketball. I think the MOG game will be there in some aspect as well, just kind of paying homage to the OG Final Fantasy VII, but I'm not expecting everything from the Gold Saucer in the original to be here in Rebirth. One thing that I definitely think we'll see in the Gold Saucer is G-Bike, because we had two scenarios in Remake where we had kind of set pieces, and I think it's pretty easy for them to implement it into kind of just one route to kind of play over and over again, whether it's to get a high score that maybe they might have an online leaderboard, or just to get items or GP to trade at a certain shop in the Gold Saucer. And the one new addition I think will be in the Gold Saucer is Fort Condor. I think there may be like a tournament hall, or definitely going to be lots of NPCs around everywhere for you to play, get new boards, get new characters, and have a real good time. I think there might be a story there. Maybe Roche may be involved in this story again somewhere, just carrying on from what he brought with in Intermission, having his own board. But I fully expect to see Fort Condor and its board game implemented throughout Rebirth, but mainly have it focused on the Gold Saucer. So we've had some fun with mini games, and I want to talk about locations now, in particular the order I think we will be visiting locations and what locations will be in Rebirth. So get ready, because you may not agree with what I'm about to say. I think it's going to start off in Calm. We're going to be going to the Chocobo farm to get introduced to the Chocobos and how we can have that system implemented. I think we'll then go to Mithril Mine. I think we won't go to Fort Condor. We will walk past the reactor, but I think it's going to be very different. I think it's just going to be a reactor that's now under Shinra control that we can't access just yet, but it's still going to have its lore that it once did. I don't know how the lore was implemented in Remake when they brought the Fort Condor board game. I don't know if it's harkening back to what had happened before in the defense game, or if it was just simply a homage to the OG mini game. But I do think that the reactor will be there, we'll be passing it, and it will be under Shinra control, and we can't just access it just yet. Naturally, we'll then go to Junon, and then we'll go over to Costa del Sol. Coral and the Gold Saucer will be linked. I do think that the locations will be slightly different. I do think that the village may actually be what the prison was in a certain aspect, and they won't have that little rural village they had with the cable car. Even though that's an iconic scene with the blue cable car going to the Gold Saucer, I just think that Coral will be implemented just a little bit different. Though, like the Fort Condor reactor that I mentioned just a moment ago, I think we'll see the Coral reactor, but again, it'll be under some kind of control, or it'll be there in the distance as a nice visual, just to say it's there and that we may visit it at a later date. Now, from the Gold Saucer, I think we'll then go to Cosmo Canyon, and then from Cosmo Canyon, with it being a big story arc with learning about the planet and maybe diving a little bit deeper into Red 13's arc, I think we will then go to Nibelheim, and then from Nibelheim, I think we'll go straight to the Temple of the Ancients, and we'll have that whole dungeon and storyline. And then from there, we'll go to Gongaga, and I think we'll have a bit of a Zack arc here, where the party kind of learns a bit more about Zack. I know that Aerith disappears in the OG, but Tifa is probably most certainly going to be there, or Aerith will be there to begin with, and then she wanders off after everything that's happened, with knowing Zack's parents are there, and maybe there's a few things here and there that might get revealed, but I think she'll be with the party, and then she'll wander off to the Sleeping Forest, to the Forgotten City, of which we will then follow them. But I don't think Bone Village is going to be there. I think Bone Village is going to be this abandoned village with bones scattered, and it's going to be like a big dungeon leading into the Sleeping Forest that will then take us to the Forgotten City. And then from the Forgotten City, I think we'll go to the Icicle Inn, and then go to the Northern Crater. So with those locations and orders of me that mentioned, and let me just try and explain why I picked and missed out certain locations. So you probably noticed that I missed out Rocket Town. I think Rocket Town is going to be a vital part in part 3. I think that we may get alluded to it being behind the Mount Nebel, but I don't think we're going to be going there. I think the story arc that we get with the Tiny Bronco is going to be scrapped, but I do think Shinra is going to have a presence in Nibelheim, and everything Temple Ancients related is going to be mentioned there. Fort Condor, again, I said that the reactor is going to be there. It's going to have a Shinra presence, and we're going to access it at part 3, and maybe these locations will make sense as I'm starting to go through them when it comes to a certain arc that we have later in Final Fantasy VII, because again, the Coral reactor I mentioned, it's going to be there, but I think it's going to be visitable as a location in part 3, as well as Wutai. Wutai would be obviously a key part, and it will really kind of enhance Yuffie's story, but I believe that Wutai would be a replacement for the underwater reactor in Junon, and those 4 locations are going to be the locations of the huge materia, which we'll be gathering in part 3. So let me just kind of reiterate what I'm saying here. We're going to be going to Rocket Town. This is where we're going to meet Cid, and I'm going to go into detail with that in just a second, because you're going to be thinking, Jen, you're missing out Cid here. Let me cook, right? So Rocket Town, huge materia. Coral reactor, huge materia. Fort Condor, huge materia. Wutai is going to be a location for the huge materia, and they're going to be key locations that we visit in part 3 for that arc. I mentioned that from the Gold Saucer we went straight to Cosmo Canyon. That's because I think Gongaga is going to be a story beat that we visit after the Temple of Ancients, like the original story, but we're not going to be able to access it on the way to Cosmo Canyon. We'll be passing it and we'll see that it's got a very heavy Shinra presence and the Turks are going to be there, and maybe we'll have a scripted Turk battle where we may get chased to Cosmo Canyon. That's what I think will happen. And again, with the locations that I mentioned, I do think the Tiny Bronco is going to be cut, and I also think snowboarding is going to be cut from the game. So let's touch on characters, because I mentioned Rocket Town being a major part of part 3, because I do believe that once we kind of escape from Junon after being captured by Shinra, after Materia has been summoned, and this is part 3 that I'm going to be kind of speculating here, I think that we're going to have the whole arc there, but we're going to be saved by Cid in the High Wind, and we're going to escape to Rocket Town and have the Cid arc there. The only argument I have against myself being this is the fact that we already have some kind of spear gameplay from Sonon from Intermission, and like they might even have that gameplay ready for Rebirth. I'm really torn between this kind of new kind of like theory, I guess, I have in my head with the kind of reality that Cid may be a playable character, but I don't think we're going to get as many playable characters as you may think in this game. Because I want to talk about Vincent now. I'm torn between if it's going to be Cid in part 2 or Vincent in part 2. Now we do go to Nibelheim and we're going to see Vincent maybe in the Shinra Mansion like we did in the original, or we're going to have him as a shadowy figure that may be kind of like stalking the party to a certain extent around Cosmo Canyon, Nibelheim area, and he joins the cause in part 3. I'm really torn between what I want to go with here, but I do believe that Rocket Town is going to be cut from part 2, therefore I feel it makes sense to me to kind of make the Cid and Rocket Town arc be linked to escaping from Junon on the High Wind. If that makes sense, I'm hoping it does. It does make sense into my head somewhere. Just trying to portray it on camera and explain it is a little bit difficult, but I'm hoping you follow me to a certain extent. Now, one thing I'm absolutely sure on, and I'm betting on this, is that Cait Sith is not going to be playable. I know that people have been excited and talking about it, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think that we're only going to probably get 3 new playable characters, and that's going to be Red 13, Yuffie, and then either Cid or Vincent in my eyes. I don't think Cait Sith is going to be playable. I don't even think he's going to be equipped on the Moogle. I think he's just going to take his presence that he had after the fact of Final Fantasy OG and just be traveling as the cat. And he is going to maybe implement himself into the story around the Gold Saucer like he did in the original, but it's not going to be tied to any kind of like being psychic or trying to predict the future or be like a palm reader or anything like that. I think we're going to have little scenes of him kind of following the party straight off the bat from Calm, and eventually him kind of tying himself into the story, and then he will be part of the party, and the way he will be part of the party is he'll be traveling on top of Red 13 like he does in Advent Children. I know a lot of people may not agree with that, but continue to hear me out. I think Cait Sith is going to take the role that the Summons did in Remake. Once he is part of your party, he's going to become an element of a random element, much like the DMW, much like his slots in the original, where he will implement random attacks in battle. Whether he is on Red 13 or whether he's not on Red 13, he'll have that effect. And the reason I say that is because I think summons are going to change in Rebirth. I think they're going to work exactly like they did in OG, where you can use them once in battle. You have a nice animation. They do a hell of a lot of damage. They may give you buffs, they may give the enemy debuffs, they may cure you, they may give you regen, whatever it may be. I think it's going to be a one-shot animation, an animation that you can then shorten after you've seen it for the first time. And once you level up that summon materia, you can then use it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times in battle. That's the way I think it's going to work in Rebirth. So let's continue on the track of a few gameplay elements that I think that we're going to get in Rebirth. And I think we're going to see the return of Materia Fusion. It's going to be a longer game. We're going to have more characters to kind of swip and swap between, and we're going to want that materia to be unique to each character. And I feel like it's probably the perfect place to reintroduce Materia Fusion. Where that will come into play in the game, I have no idea, but it's definitely something that I think they will reintroduce into Rebirth. Now the combat, most of this is just going to go off what I've seen in the trailer. I think it's going to be much like what we've seen in Remake, but of course we've got more characters in the mix, and while we're kind of not going through dungeons, where I think in dungeons we'll have specific party arrangements, we've seen it in the Mithril Mine, we've seen it on the ship going to Costa del Sol, as we're traveling through the world map, we'll call it, I think that all the characters are going to be traveling alongside you, and you can swip them in and out, you can do the team up attacks, and you know, I think aerial combat is going to be a bit more of a focus as well. Now, I mentioned that we're going to be swapping in and out of the party. I think the PHS is going to be reintroduced in Rebirth, and it's going to be quite expansive. I think the key factor of it being in is going to be like the system of calling allies in and out of the party during battle, and maybe certain story beats where it isn't tied to a fixed party, you can select your party using the PHS. I also think the PHS is going to reintroduce a few features that we got in Crisis Core. I think that mail is going to return with the PHS. With the PHS essentially being a phone, I think we're going to have mail, which is going to then go into categories like we got in Crisis Core, so we can catch up with the world and what's happening around us. And overall, it's going to be a nice kind of world building mechanic, whether we kind of look at the Shinra newsletters, or maybe there's a Turk newsletter, maybe there's NPCs that we meet along the way that may write a newspaper or something along those lines, where we kind of get that kind of world building around us as we're traveling through Rebirth. I also think that the PHS is going to be key for Chadley missions going forward. We'll have the portable combat simulator in our back pocket, and as we're going through Rebirth, Chadley might send us a good old text message through the PHS saying, hey, you know, I've got a new Materia I want to try out. Or maybe he is aware that we are traveling through the Mithril Mine, and he says, in the Mithril Mine, if you go down here, there's a monster here that gives us a strained energy. Will you be able to beat it for some combat data? I think that will continue, and I think the PHS will be a key element for that. And I think, you know, I'm going to stop the breaks there with things I do, because again, looking back on it, yeah, some of it might be hopium, and some of it I might be clinging on to just little things here and there, but it really creates for a good discussion. Maybe I've thrown some ideas out there that you might be like, you know what? I think I might agree. I think you might have something there. Or you might listen to something and you might be like, no, Jen, you're completely wrong. And that's what I want us to talk about in the comment section below, because I'm sure you will have some great or crazy ideas for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So please throw them down there in the comment section below. Let's have a discussion and really get excited for this. Again, might be completely wrong, but I might be onto something with a few of these things. Now, I didn't touch on the story and what's happening with the story. If you guys want to see my opinions on where I think the story will go and what kind of side of the boat I'm on with what's going on with the kind of is everyone dead? Have we got multiple timelines? Have we got one timeline? Let me know that you want to see a video like that, and I'll throw one up for you guys. But I do appreciate your time watching. I'm just trying to build the hype for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because I'm really excited for it to come out. Not that long to go. This time next year we would have all played it, and we're going to be anticipating what part 3 is going to be all about. So let's get ready, let's have some fun. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.